How's it going, PC Nation? Welcome back to a brand new video. I know you guys are expecting a happy New Year's Eve or happy New Year's videos today and tomorrow, but I want to take a little break and spend time with family, and plus I'm going up to my uncle's for the New Year's. So that's why I'm taking, this is last video of the decade. Right here. Last video of the decade, so I want to talk about something about the decade. So I always wanted to do this little series of mine. I might try to do it if this video takes off, and it's still, does anyone remember, still remember? Does anyone remember blah blah blah? Does anyone still remember blah blah blah? But in this video, we're going to be going back, all the way back to the beginning of the decade, and talking about, does anyone still remember Paper Jamz? Yes, Paper Jamz. They were made in the beginning of this decade in 2010. I think they've been discontinued since I think 2011. I think they only lasted a year. But I remember the commercial, very fondly. Because in 2010 I was like, wow, what is this? Paper, but they're musical instruments. So everyone knows what origami is. You make paper stuff. Well, what Paper Jamz was, you made paper instruments, like the actual paper stuff. You made the instruments out of paper, and like the instruments they sold you were made out of paper, but they still played music. So back in 2010, there was this awesome commercial about, you can play musical instruments just made out of paper. Da-na-na-na! And then all these guitars and stuff. And that's what their concept was for Paper Jamz. The concept was, you can do a lot of things. You can make a band out of paper, basically. Or play music out of paper. It was one of those two things was their slogan. They had, I think their slogan was musical fun, but made out of paper, something like that. Or one thing I remember them saying, you can be a paper rock star and stuff like that. So what the point was, Paper Jamz was something really popular back in 2010. It was like a big thing, because they just came out in 2010, and I think they went away around 2012 area, 2011, because they died out, but they were a fun concept at the time. That's why I'm making this video, because I want to make an end of the decade video about something that came out in this decade. So, mix it up a little bit. So, Paper Jamz were one of those things that you made guitars, drum sets. I think that was pretty much it. I think there's electric guitar and drum sets at the time. I don't remember if I owned one or not. No, I really wanted one. That's the thing. I really wanted one. I really was like, oh, I need to get one and try it out. But the hype around it didn't last that long. Because if I did get one, I thought it would be boring. So I never got one. But I like seeing the commercials, because the point of commercials like that is to hype up the product, especially to kids, because 2010 was, a bunch of weird toys, like fun toys came out, like fun weird toys came out, and like the 2010 era was the era of call, get one free. Like, you don't see that much anymore. But back in like 2010, 11, 12 era, back in the early 2010 decade, you saw call one, get one free, only $2.99, 18 and older, blah, blah, blah. The guy being really fast is on the thing. Or, you get this, we don't, like commercials like that. Like, because Billy Mays, Info commercials were the biggest thing back in 2010 because of Billy Mays, who was info commercial king the decade prior. Billy Mays made it a big thing, so it came back in to the spotlight of infomercials back in 2010, because Billy Mays passed away the year before the new decade started. So everyone was doing info commercials back then. It was the biggest thing in commercials. It was, like, info commercials, what I'm trying to say, like, trying to hype up commercials. Like, Billy Mays was a salesman. Like Phil Swift is now, Billy Mays was the salesman of the previous early 2000s. Billy Mays was the hype salesman, was the hype man for a product. They're hype commercials. That's what I'm going to call them. Not info commercials, hype commercials. Like flex tape. I saw this boat in half, like that. That's what made the toys sellable back then. That's what started out with Paper Jamz and all the toys that started in this decade. Like Paper Jamz, like, oh, if you get this, you get this one for free. We'll throw in a drum set. We'll throw in this. Blah, blah. Like, they weren't that, like, yelling because it was kids buying the product. They were trying to sell the kids. They're like, oh, you can be a rock star. Hey, kid, you ever want to be a rock star? Now you can with Paper Jamz. That's what Paper Jamz was all about. That's why I wanted to make this video to end off the decade. Because I want to talk about a product that started in this decade, and for my video to finish off this decade. So Paper Jamz and like toys nowadays, the commercial toys nowadays, you know, they're meant for little kids. Like teenagers weren't buying, or not going to buy the toys now of the days that we have. But back then, if I was a teenager in 2010 and seeing a commercial, like excitement, like now the commercials are not as exciting. They're not as hyped back then when I was a kid. They're not as hyped anymore, in my opinion. They're all calm and, okay, here's this, we'll throw in this, like, they're like that. They're all calm. But back then, like, Paper Jamz and all these other toys that were back in the early of the decade, beginning of the decade, commercials were, we'll give you this. Must be 18 or older. Like, it used to say that all the time. Now, it's not as hyped, or they're not hyped, and they're not as well thought out and made. Like, I think the companies now forget what their audience is. Back then, it was, okay, Paper Jamz meant for boys. They're meant for boys, but girls can buy them too, but they're meant for boys. Like, stuff now, you don't know, because there's commercials for stuff now. I watch commercials all the time, and the stuff now that I watch commercials about, when I watch TV, because I watch commercials on the TV, you don't know if they're meant for girls or boys. But now, back then, in the beginning, Paper Jamz were, not to be mean, but they were meant for boys. That's what they were selling. You could tell when there's only one actor or one gender actor in that commercial. Now they have boys and girls in both. I understand why, because it's, new decade. But what I'm trying to say, you had the hyped commercials, and then you have the calm commercials. You could tell what they were selling them to. The hype commercials were sold to boys, because boys, we have a lot of energy back in when we were kids. Like, kids nowadays are like, phone, iPad, like all that. But back then, I know I'm sounding like an old man, but what I'm trying to say, toys are better back then when they were sold, because you knew who your audience was, you knew who you were selling to, and you knew how to structure a commercial. And there was only one actor for that commercial. And now there's like multiple actors for one commercial. But what I'm trying to say, Paper Jamz were so exciting back then. And I don't know what happened to them. That's why I'm making this video, because I haven't saw anything about them. I know they're a simple concept and they're dumb. A lot of people say they're dumb, but, to end off this decade, we gotta talk about something in this decade. And I think Paper Jamz was a great, fun little concept. Like, you could be a rock star. All it takes is paper. Paper Jamz. Da 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 da. Like, like, that was exciting. Info commercials or hype commercials, whatever you want to call them, was this era. Beginning of this era, beginning of this century, we made info commercials. The previous century also made hype commercials a thing. Like Billy Mays. If I was a 30-year-old man in 2009, 2008, and I wanted OxyClean, and I saw a Billy Mays commercial, I'll go buy OxyClean. Because he hyped it up so much. Or all of the commercials he did, he hyped them up. That's what I'm saying. So, Paper Jamz was one of the hype commercials. And it was one of the greatest, smallest, dumbest concepts, but it was so fun because of the commercial made it fun. So hopefully you guys still remember Paper Jamz. I know I went off a little bit off topic, but I might make a second video for the end of this decade. I don't know. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, press the share button, press the like button, press the red shine subscribe button, press the bell so you're notified every time I upload a video. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.